I want to speak on this special Father's Day on the subject, why honor your father? Say that with me. Why honor your father? I want to focus on the purpose and the power of fathers. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you're watching this television program, and I'm glad you're listening to this CD, because I'm going to share with you one of the most important messages you have ever heard, and also to help you understand why God gave this very subtle command: honor your father. Let me begin with some sad news to show you how important the fathers really are. You will find some statistics and some reports that were given over the last few years of research on fathers, and Time magazine once again did a cover story on men and fathers for this special Father's Day season, and here's what their research discovered. Number one, and I quote from Time magazine, it says, more than virtually any factor, a biological father's presence in the family will determine a child's success and happiness. I want to repeat this. This is a secular research. This is not the Bible. This is what psychologists, psychiatrists, and behavioral scientists have studied, and this is their conclusion. More than virtually any other factor, a biological father's presence in the family will determine a child's success and happiness. Now, what comes to my mind right away is, what happens if two women get married? If this research is true, which from their studies they concluded is true, then a child in a home with two mothers is already in danger. Here's another quote from the research. 38% of all kids in the West now live without their biological father. That's an increase of 17.5% in 1960. In the Bahamas, it's probably higher, more like 40%. How important are fathers? The research also said this: more than half of today's children will spend at least part of their childhood without a father. Dr. Blankenhorn, in his research book, Fatherless America, the subtitle of his book is this: Confronting Our Most Urgent Social Problem. You'd think it would be drugs, or AIDS, or gangs, but he said, based on his studies, the most urgent social problem is this: quote, fatherlessness is the most destructive trend of our generation. Let me repeat that. Fatherlessness is the most destructive trend of our generation. These are scientific research results. In other words, fatherlessness is more destructive than drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, gang warfare, incest, corruption in government, corruption in religion. He said there's nothing worse for a society than a fatherless society. Here's one I thought was very interesting. Time magazine quoted their research again. I quote, the absence of fathers is linked to most social nightmares, like from boys with guns to girls with babies. They link that to fatherlessness. In other words, if you get the fathers sorted out, you can solve the crime problem. We keep building jails to lock the fathers away than to invest in programs to produce better fathers. Here is another quote that's very depressing. Same research, Time magazine, the effects of fathers. 46% of all families with children headed by a single mother live below the poverty line, compared with 8% of those with two parents in the house. Can I just ask you to look at that for a couple of minutes? Just study it for a second. This is research now. It says 46% of all families with children headed by a single mother live below the poverty line, compared to 8% of those with two parents. This research is linking poverty not to lack of money, but to lack of the presence of a father. Could it be then that poverty is really a fatherhood problem? The research is showing that. And finally, they say that social studies show that only 43% of state prison inmates grew up with both, and that as a missing father is a better predictor of criminal activity than race or poverty. 43% of inmates in prison grew up without both parents in the house. Time magazine gave one last thought I thought you may want to remember. I quote, "Social scientists have made links between a father's absence and his child's likelihood of being a dropout, jobless, a drug addict, a suicide victim, mentally ill, or a target of sexual abuse, such as incest." End quote. The link between a father's absence and drug addiction and joblessness. It's amazing how much we don't understand God. You know what God does? God will give you a command and never explain why. God told us, for example, do not eat fish without scale. That's what he said. Scientists have proven that every kind of fish that doesn't have scale has the highest concentration of mercury, which gives you cancer. God never explains it. He just says, don't eat any fish without scale. Now they finally found out that fish like catfish, tuna, without scale, they collect mercury. Do you know mercury is also the source of insanity? The concentration of mercury in your brain could actually lead you to psychological disorder. And God says, don't eat that. He doesn't say because you'll be psychologically demented. That's why the Bible says obedience is better than arguing with God. Now, here God simply gives another command. God says, obey me. Watch this. Now, I want you to remember who God's talking to, why he's talking to them, and what is his objective. What is God doing? God told Abraham, come out to me, be separated, and out of you I will make a nation. Everybody say nation. So God's purpose for calling Abraham was not to begin a religion. God never gave Abraham a religion. God says, Abraham, come out, Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, and I will make of you a great nation.